Welcome to the Aim for Success podcast. I'm Joni Knighty, a licensed psychotherapist and certified clinical hypnotist and trainer. I'm also the founder of Aim for Success and Joni Knighty Hypnosis. I've been practicing for over 27 years, and I'm excited about sharing my experiences and those of my guests. Be sure and check out my websites, aim-for-success.com and joniknightyhypnosis.com to learn more about my services and products. I also invite you to check out my store, aim-store.net. As a gift to you for listening to this podcast, use the code SUCCESS to receive 25% off your first self-hypnosis audio purchase. You are listening to the Aim for Success podcast number 10, featuring Steve Lazarton. Steve is a former All-American swimmer with an impressive coaching resume over the last 2 decades. He has coached high school, USA Swimming Club levels in Florida, Alabama, and California, and is currently the head coach of the swimming and diving programs at Simpson University. Listen as Steve discusses his appreciation for incorporating mental toughness strategies into coaching, the importance of mentors, and hear him share a personal story that has required him to use mental toughness to cope with a recent tragedy. So hello, everyone. Today I have with me on podcast number 10, I can't believe it, Steve Lazarton, and I'm so excited to finally not only have him on here, but to see his face and hear his voice. It's been a while. And let's start with talking about how we met. Would that be okay?
Absolutely. Your daughters came to Bolles.
Yes.
Remember Lauren, I believe, is a freshman.
Yes.
And I got to know you from just being on the pool deck.
Yes, and it was a great decision. That was one of the best decisions that I ever made. Making that decision to bring my girls to Bolles was a big decision. But looking at just the sport of swimming alone, I always say that it requires it's a riot. It requires a ridiculous investment of time and money, right?
It is. And energy. A lot of energy.
Energy. So that's great. We may come up with a whole new acronym. But making that decision, I remember going, at that time, Sergio Lopez-Miro was the head coach. And I remember meeting with him, and I'm pretty sure he might remember this because I came in with 30 questions. He took the time to answer every question. And it was actually really great because it made my decision very easy. Not necessarily because of the answers, but because of his willingness to be patient with me and just to listen to what it was that I was concerned about. That way, those issues were already discussed. And so there was no need for me to overly involve myself. And I was allowed to let all of you do your jobs. What stands out in my mind at that time about you was that you were always smiling like you do so often. And sometimes I'm not even sure you knew that it was really helping me personally as a parent. I can only imagine how many kids, not only then, because you were there way before I got there, 2001, right?
Yes.
You coached at Bolles 16 seasons, am I correct?
15.
Okay.
15. Yep.
So that's quite a long time. So I'm imagining how many times your smile alone, how much that helped those athletes on any given day. What we say is certainly important, and the words that we use affect different people in different ways. But our body language is maybe more important, right?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you still smiling on deck these days?
I do my best.
Yeah.
We've had a good season thus far.
Let's talk about who we are, because let's talk about where you are now and what you're doing. That is pretty
I'm
exciting.
in Redding, California. We moved here after Olympic trials in 2016. And I started a small club here in town. And this past year, I've started a new college program at a small Christian university here in Redding.
And that's Simpson?
Simpson University,
right?
yes.
Okay. And so you are the inaugural women's and men's coach. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's very exciting.
Coming up in the year, yeah. They announced it right at the beginning of January. So actually at this point, I was being interviewed, and they made the decision, I think, somewhere right around Christmas time, and then they made the official announcement at the beginning of January.
Wow, what a great decision they made, in my opinion.
I appreciate that.
I'm thinking about how amazing it must have been for those athletes who wanted to swim at that particular university and might not have had the opportunity otherwise. So it sounds like you have a successful season so far. I just keep imagining myself out there talking to your team. I see it happening.
I want it.
Oh, I know it's going to happen.
I would love that. I would love for you to come out here.
Yeah, of course I will. I'm all over the country. Why won't I show up there? Of course I will.
What the thing I loved about your daughters is to watch how they progressed from their freshman year all the way through college, and how much they thrived both athletically, but also socially, personally, emotionally, and professionally. I've loved watching them become successful adults, and listening to Ashley's conversation about really following in your footsteps. What a blessing that is, to know how much influence that you've had over your daughter, that she wants to do the same thing that you're doing right now.
Well, thank you. I'm very excited that she's chosen, and that all of my children have chosen something in the helping profession. But what I love about what you said is that you noticed, and you continue to notice. And I think that's great for athletes, parents, and other coaches to hear, that you didn't just notice their times or how they progress as athletes, but you've been following them as people. And really, that's what these skills are all about. That's what I like to think that I am, as what I would consider a high performance thinking coach, just helping people to think differently, to be better and feel better. I like that I'm seeing more and more coaches want to really focus on that part of that triangle of athletics as well.
Right.
But then when you have all of that in place, just like your athletes do when they show up for meets, and then even meets that they consider bigger meets, if the mental toughness and the mental strength and the preparedness isn't there, that all of that hard work won't come to fruition, or at least what they want. And so I know you've seen a lot of that over the years. And
I have.
So what are you doing with your athletes towards the mental side? Because you, being a former athlete, and we haven't even talked about that yet, you'll hear some of that in the intro, but being a former swimmer, you swam for, was it Allegheny?
Allegheny College.
And then, University of Florida.
I had a eclectic collegiate career. I started out at Denison University in Granville, Ohio. I transferred to Allegheny College, and then I ended up transferring to the University of Florida. And every opportunity I had to be part of a team was awesome. Met my wife at University of Florida, and Go Gators.
Oh, yes. And what a win last night,
Good game last night.
No, I wasn't too unhappy about that myself, being a Gator fan. So. And how wonderful that you met your wife there. It's interesting,
Absolutely.
isn't it? That, and I think also a plus that you were exposed to a lot of different types of coaches and places, teammates. I can only imagine how that has added to your, not only your career, but your life.
Yes. And one of the things I've learned as a coach is there's so many ways that you can get an athlete to become successful. Training regimens can be varied from volume, quality, USRPT. But as you asked the question, what are we doing with the mental aspect? I think that's something that has been untapped in our sport for years, and trying to incorporate that with our own athletes, of getting them to believe in themselves. Is something that I think Sergio Lopez was phenomenal at, getting his athletes to believe in themselves.
Yes.
And I watched kids absolutely thrive in that environment of having a coach that would kind of throw the nuggets out at them. Jason Kalanog, who's at Texas A&M, he was phenomenal about that too. They would throw nuggets at these swimmers, and the swimmers would just shine in the environment that the coaches created. And what I'm trying to do at Simpson, and what I'm trying to do at the club that I've started, is to develop that culture here in Reading. Yes.
Well, and that's excellent, because think about that. The word believe, you just talked about, that environment and how wonderful that was. And it wasn't just about the sport. It's interesting. A lot of people think that what I do is mainly just help athletes get better at their sport, right? And I go to conferences. I always start with the myriad of ways that therapists or coaches or, someone like myself can help athletes. And the list of issues just keeps growing and getting longer and longer. We want to put it out there that we can help with those types of things. And of course, my goal is to teach coaches and athletes how to do all of this mental toughness on their own. And so starting with the coaches and having that trickle down to the athletes, that's my goal. And in fact, I remember there was a young man that he was kind of down about his performance, and Sergio came up and said, I won't say the exact words, but he basically said, why does that matter right now? You're here. And he, kind of talked about it's how easy it is. And I've always said this, how easy it is for these athletes to lose perspective about how great they really are, and they only see that window, and when you get to that Olympic trial level, everybody's great, right?
Yep.
And so if for some reason you don't have a best time, which statistically we know that most athletes don't have a best time at Olympic trials, I think those are great things to prepare the athletes for. It's very interesting. I love the brain. I love explaining the quick and easy version of how the brain works on sports to the athletes. But I also love talking to them about how there's a lot of neurology in the gut and in their stomachs. And so, yes, sometimes they do have those feelings that come up, and that can either be something that really hurts their performances and also takes away from the enjoyment of racing and the experience, or it can help depending on how much they understand about it and what they call it. Knowing that being nervous and excited are physiologically the same exact thing brings comfort to a lot of athletes when they choose to say, "Oh, okay, I'm glad you showed up," whether they feel a little something different in the head, or they feel that extra heart, racing. But to say, "I'm glad you showed up," because all that tells me is that this is important to me, and I'm so excited to do it. And being able to make that mental shift has helped unbelievably, simple concepts. I've been putting all of my techniques, all my audios, everything's recorded audio or video. So I'll send you I'll send some stuff to you so you can start using that if you'd like to. Because, yeah, it's a lot of fun because, sometimes athletes just want to hear it from someone else, right? Just like a parent, like your kids, you say the same thing to your kid and then somebody else says it and it's just a genius idea. And we're sitting here going, wait, what?
Yeah. The challenge is, I think with athletes and us as well professionally, is learning what our identity is and not letting our performances dictate our identity.
Well,
and that's
I really
a really
like
hard lesson to learn. It took me years to learn that. And honestly, I probably didn't learn it nearly as well as I should have back in Florida. It took me probably the last 4 or 5 years to recognize who I am is not what I do.
Yes. I just have to say, I'm not going to put you on the spot to talk about this a whole lot, but you're one of the strongest people that I know, and being mentally tough doesn't mean that you don't have any problems, because we're always going to have those. It doesn't mean that we don't ever feel sad or we don't feel confused about what to do. It just means that we know we will get there. Developing this knowingness and always trying. Your family. I just think about this situation. You just went through this traumatic. How long has that been now?
2 years. I'm sorry, last year. Yeah, we're at about 14, 15 months. We had a huge fire here in our city. About 1,000 people lost their homes. We were one of them. And we've had 2 major fires here in the northern part of the state. One was the Carr Fire in July of last summer, and the other one was the Camp Fire, which was in Paradise. It was about an hour away from us. That was in November. And, one of those things I think that I learned through my experiences prior to that is when you find out you've got nothing. Like, we had clothes and some keepsakes. That's all we had. But I recognized through what I've gone through before is we're going to get through it. And I was not ever hesitant over the fact that we were going to get through it. We did, and we've thrived since. We've learned a lot about it ourselves and our family. I think our family is stronger because of it. Not that I wish it upon anybody. I mean, one thing you were saying is we still have issues. I watched in the last month in Southern California, I'm watching a live news feed and I'm breaking down watching this fire sweep up a canyon. And I'm just, I'm praying for these people to get out of their houses and safety. And you see firefighters, and it's just, it was traumatic just to walk through that again. And
Absolutely.
I completely lost it, but I recognize at the end we're okay. We're okay.
Yeah.
And so that's something I've been able to communicate to others who have been in similar situations.
You're an extremely empathic person anyway, which I appreciate. But I think it's an interesting choice of words to say that you lost it, when I feel that what you described is you actually got it. You understood exactly what that felt like, and you immediately prayed for those people, which is something I'm sure you also learned, and I learned through your experience, is sometimes as a friend or an outsider looking in, it's easy to feel helpless. And that's not a good feeling either. To be so far away from your friends, to feel, what could I do that could possibly matter? But knowing that just thinking about just sending messages and not just, but praying for someone is huge.
Yes, very much.
But I appreciate you sharing that with us. But as a coach, as a mentor, as a person who, could communicate with and be there for anyone who's been through a similar experience, that's huge. Like you said, we don't choose, of course, none of us would actually choose some of those traumatic experiences, but we know that we're better for it.
Yes.
And it's a process, isn't it?
It is. It is. But being, one of the things you learn is how important your friends are in situations like that. And they don't have to have the answers, but just them being present, them reaching out, what in my experience was oh my gosh, Joni, I can't imagine what it would have been like had it not been that way.
Yeah.
We had such an outpouring of love. Just humbled in so many ways and thankful. Just such a thankful experience to be loved. And recognizing in traumatic situations that we experience is that we are never alone. We are never alone. There are going to be always people around us that will help and or just be present. That's the one thing I've learned through it is just you don't have the answers. You can't explain it at a lot of times. But being present with somebody is worth its weight in gold.
I'm excited about what you'll be able to do on the mental side for the athletes, and just being able to teach them some really amazing but simple techniques, and just giving them some information that they can think about instead of some of those things they might be thinking about that aren't helping.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things, just learning how we have a tendency to distort things. We say things that are either familiar or just the common things to respond to, maybe a disappointment, in athletics, if we're just talking about athletes in general, or just something that they've heard someone else say, and it may not be helping. And so that simple question that the athletes that work with me, they complete my sentences sometimes because I'm so repetitive, because I know that repetition is the key.
That's good.
Yes.
They're learning.
It's you're a teacher, and it's the key to forming new habits. And so just by saying something over and over again, and I say, always ask yourself the question when you feel something in your head. If you feel something, whether it's your chest or your stomach, that's your clue that something isn't quite right. Mm-hmm. Ask yourself the question, what am I saying to myself? And is it helping or is it hurting? And if the answer is it's hurting, then it's simple. The solution is to learn how to say something that you will actually internalize and believe. Eventually you will if you repeat it anyway. Mm-hmm. And something that will work. So there's so many things. So I'm excited about at least sending you. Hopefully I can be on your pool deck in the future.
That would be an honor to have you here.
I would love to be there, and I just know I'm going to be there. So, Well, don't you think that's true? As an athlete, when you wanted something, when you set a goal, and even as a coach, helping other athletes set the goal, you have to say it out loud, and you have to see it first, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's no different. Just the simple process of goal setting, the simple process of putting goals out there, and then reassessing those goals as soon as you achieve them, and or if you don't achieve them, what can we do as a coaching staff to help you get closer to the goals that you have set for yourself?
Right. And it is a process. I think
it's always a process.
It is always a process. That might be one of the hardest things to teach is patience and the process. And I think it's beautiful that it's a process. And I think this is what happens. And and the main reason I brought it up with athletes, younger athletes, is they are afraid to fail. I had a great conversation that I talk about many times when I give my team talks with Ryan Murphy, and it was just a casual conversation we were having at a meet, and he was talking about how important it is not to be afraid to fail, to go in, and if your coach has asked you to swim something a certain way, there's a reason for that, because it's part of the bigger picture, and you're developing that bigger picture that we were just talking about, that process. And that's a strength that he has and many of the top athletes. But many young athletes they'll start out that way, and then they'll just kind of go for it in a way it's just a kind of haphazard, and they panic because they don't want to fail. And if you're willing to fall short of someone else's goal because you happen to be racing in that particular meet, and that isn't the end goal, is to win, it's to get as close as you can or win doing it a certain way, then I believe that's the key to becoming really successful, and so
agreed. I a few weeks ago we were at practice, and I told my athletes, it's like, I don't care if you fail. I do care that you continue to try even if you fail. Because we are going to fail. I had a conversation with a friend who is just his business has thrived over the last year, and he posted something about how many failures he had prior to his success, and I shot back at him and said, you've never failed. Your outcome hasn't been what you thought it would be, but everything that you've done to that point has gotten you to where you are now.
Yeah, that's great. I love that reframe.
He's an amazing man. I mean, he's was a star athlete at University of Florida, wide receiver, played professional ball in Tampa Bay, has done an amazing job of really being an entrepreneur in the leadership realm, and he's influencing businesses now. And I sat there maybe 10 years ago with him at breakfast, and he was going through some plans, and I'm just sitting there like, you are amazing.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out the way he thought it would, but like I said, everything he did to that point has gotten to him where he is now.
So that's true for all of us, don't you think? The journey, that process. And so we don't have to be stuck in that place of disappointment when the direction changes and we felt we couldn't control that, because we're not always in control, are we?
We're learning that a lot as I've gotten older. I'm learning that a lot more. We have a lot less control than we thought we did.
Yes. One of my colleagues said something so simple to me, and it was actually in casual conversation in a hallway at a conference. And they were mentioning a technique. I actually said, I'm not really good at that. And the truth is, I hadn't had much experience or training. Right. And he said, hold on a minute. Would you be willing to repeat that sentence and just add one word at the end? And I said, let me hear it. And he said, yet.
Yep.
And he was so right. I'm not good at that yet. We need to give ourselves a break to learn. If we're interested, get good at something. And so that's just a great tip to give your athletes, is when you hear them making those types of statements, have them add that word, and then maybe ask them, what do you think it would take for you to be good at it?
Yeah.
There are just some simple things that you can do that will generate that thinking in a non-threatening, I would say, future-pacing, forward-looking way that they could get excited about. So So are we ever going to see you again in Florida, or I'm actually going to come out there to
Not this week. We went out. We came back for Christmas last year. We're going to stay here for Christmas. We'll figure out something with what we have. I'll definitely, yes, probably spring break. I still have I have my surfboard and my daughter's surfboard out there, so we have incentive to come back.
Okay, well, good. Get back here and I will make sure that I'm not in another town, like state or country this time, because I don't want to miss you. But just do you have time for one more thing?
Yeah, sure.
So you had some great mentors as well in coaching, being coached as an athlete, and also learning to coach and just adding to your toolbox of coaching. So some of those mentors, I know Jon Sakovich, Sergio was one of them. There were some mentioned, Jeff Poppell.
Mm-hmm.
How important do you think mentors are? That's the first question. It's a two-part question. And what makes them special? What makes that mentorship so special? Because not everyone that coaches you becomes a mentor.
The mentorship is invaluable, especially as a young coach that I was starting out. We're going to make mistakes, and I think anybody's going to admit the fact that we knew a lot more in our 20s than we do now in my 40s about the sport, and having somebody to for lack of a better way to describe it, to love us through our mistakes and give us direction as to how to be the best that we can be is invaluable. And I was so fortunate to be at Bolles with Larry Schoaf and Jeff Poppell, Rick Bishop, Sergio and John, Dale Porter. These are titans of the sport in terms of swimming, and it all of that came from Greg Troy. And so you have this you have this love of the sport. And I think what was special about the coaches that were at Bolles is they want to promote the sport. It's not necessarily themselves. It's the love of the sport. And so what I found is how many coaches, even as I've gotten older, how many coaches I can just sit with at a meet and pick their brains. And it's awesome. It's like you're on deck professional development. I can't say enough about it.
And I'm thinking about how all of those different people together with who you are, how that's then been the process and the development of who you are as a coach, a person, a father, whatever. I feel that way about my colleagues, about my mentors in the field, in the mental health field, in neurolinguistic programming, and then hypnosis. I am appreciative of those mentors who actually cared about me learning, and actually taking what they're teaching and using it to help other people, as opposed to, there are other types of teachers. And what a gigantic swim family we have, right? You're mentioning all of those names, and all but one I know and have learned from as well. But what a terrific, just incredible swim family we have. It's
very blessed to have been part of it.
Yes. So, yeah, there's hardly anywhere that you can go that you can't connect with someone. And
that is absolutely true.
Right? I know at one of the graduation parties, some people were asked to get up and speak, and it was some. I didn't say a lot, but the one thing I ended with, and I'll never forget, was just letting them know that there's no place like home, and home meaning at that time Bolles, because we had all these parents that were going to be spread out all over the country with their kids swimming, and other countries with their kids swimming, going off and swimming, and that I had no doubt that we would be there for any of them. So
it's fantastic. I'm actually recruiting a female athlete whose coach I coached, 15 years ago, one of my first years at Bolles.
Amazing.
And I had no idea.
Oh, wow.
She goes, "Do you know so-and-so?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "Yeah, he swam for you." And I'm like, oh my goodness. It's a small world, and that's a beautiful part of this sport.
Thank you so much for
your
being
time.
here today. I'm going to include as much as possible in the introduction because I want people to really appreciate who you are and, you know, how your window of time is very small to give to something like this. But thank you for being here for me today and for all the athletes, coaches, and parents that will benefit from watching.
Thanks.
So, yeah.
It was a pleasure to talk with you.